Fog rose from the Monongahela River, enveloping the smokestacks of the Ridgway steel mill in a gray veil. At 6 in the morning, the city awoke to the sound of factory horns, a ritual that had remained unchanged for half a century. Gregory Collins stood at the window of his office on the 3rd floor of the plant's administration building, watching the first shift workers hurry to the gate. At 48, Gregory retained the military bearing that neither years of work at the CIA nor the last 5 years as head of security at the Allegheny Steel plant had been able to break. His gray temples and deep wrinkles around his eyes betrayed a man who had seen too much. Few in Ridgevale knew his past. Officially, he was just a former military man who had decided to settle down in a quiet, industrial town. "Mr. Collins, the morning report is ready." The security guard's voice from the next room brought him back to reality. Gregory nodded without turning around. The night had been quiet, as usual. In Ridgeville, nothing much ever happened except petty thefts and drunken brawls outside bars. 20 miles from the factory, in the dormitory of the Pittsburgh Medical College, Gregory's son, Falcon, was waking up. The 22-year-old junior stretched, preparing for another day of lectures and clinical practice. Falcon had inherited his father's tall stature and determined gaze, but his character was gentler. Where Gregory was accustomed to solving problems with force, Falcon believed in human dignity and justice. "Another day of saving the world," he muttered to his roommate as he pulled on a white shirt. Falcon dreamed of becoming an emergency room doctor, working where every second could decide someone's fate. His father did not approve of his choice, considering medicine too idealistic a profession for a cruel world. In another part of Ridgway, Ryan McCormick had already been up for 2 hours. The owner of McCormick Construction was used to starting his day early. In the construction business, every hour of downtime cost money. At 35, Ryan had become one of the most influential businessmen in the city, winning several large contracts for the reconstruction of industrial facilities. But few people knew about the other side of Ryan's life. In the evenings, in the basement of his house on the outskirts of town, he gathered like-minded people, a group that called itself the White Wolves. Officially, it was a discussion club for discussing traditional values and preserving heritage. In reality, it was a platform for people who believed that America was losing its identity because of wrong immigrants and mixed marriages. Tommy Henderson was one of Ryan's most devoted members. The 29-year-old construction worker lost his job at a factory 3 years ago when production began to decline. Since then, he had been scraping by with odd jobs in construction, angry at the world and looking for someone to blame. Ryan gave him both a purpose and an explanation for his problems. "Our grandfathers built this city with their own hands," Tommy liked to repeat in the bar after work. "And now, who gets the best jobs?" Those who came here from all over the world, Detective Sarah Mitchell, listened to such conversations with growing concern. 41 years of service in the Ridgway police force had taught her to recognize dangerous sentiments. Over the past 2 years, the number of incidents of vandalism involving racist graffiti had tripled. So far, it had been minor stuff: graffiti on walls, broken windows in immigrant families' homes. But Sarah sensed that something was brewing beneath the surface of the quiet town. She sat in her office at the police headquarters, studying the reports from the past week. Another incident. Someone threw a brick through the window of a Mexican restaurant on Main Street. There were no witnesses, and the cameras didn't capture anything useful. The restaurant owner, an elderly man named Carlos Ramirez, was afraid to file an official complaint. "They just want us to leave," he told Sarah in an informal conversation. "But we've been Americans for 20 years. Where are we supposed to go?" That same day, Falcon sat in a medical college lecture hall listening to a lecture on trauma. The professor explained the principles of triage in mass casualty situations. "Remember," he said, "your job is to save as many lives as possible. Sometimes that means making difficult decisions about who to help first." After the lecture, Falcon talked with his classmates about their upcoming clinical practice at Ridgefield Hospital. He planned to spend the weekend at home visiting his father, whom he hadn't seen in a month. Gregory always insisted that family was the most important thing a person had in this world. That evening, Ryan McCormick held another White Wolves meeting in his basement. 8 people gathered: construction workers, former factory workers, a couple of small business owners. Tommy Henderson sat next to Ryan, listening intently. "The city is changing," Ryan said, pointing to a map of Ridgeway hanging on the wall. "People who made America great used to live here. Now look at the streets. Spanish spoken, strange food, foreign traditions. Our children are growing up in a world we don't recognize." The participants nodded and shared their stories. Someone complained about an immigrant neighbor who played loud music. Another told how his daughter had started dating a boy outside our circle. Tommy recalled the days when the factory was operating at full capacity and every honest worker could count on a steady paycheck. "What can we do?" asked one of the participants. "Watch for now," Ryan replied, "but be ready to act when the time comes." Meanwhile, Gregory was finishing his workday at the factory. The security service worked like clockwork. His experience in the CIA came in handy for organizing the security of the industrial facility. He checked the reports, walked around the posts, and made sure all the cameras were working. Methodicalness and attention to detail had become second nature to him over the years of operational work. At home, Gregory ate dinner alone, as he had done since his wife died of cancer 5 years ago. Falcon called once a week, but Gregory understood that his son was building his own life, and that was right. Sometimes he regretted not telling Falcon the truth about his work at the CIA, but some secrets were better kept. The evening news reported on yet another political scandal in Washington. Gregory turned off the TV and took some old photos out of the safe. Falcon in his school uniform, a family vacation at the lake, his high school graduation. His son had chosen a path of public service, and Gregory was proud of that, though he was also worried. In his world, good intentions often led to tragedy. Sarah Mitchell also spent the evening at home, studying a map of the city and marking the locations of the latest incidents. Geographical analysis showed a pattern. Most of the cases occurred in areas with a high concentration of immigrant families. This was no coincidence. She called the police chief, but he did not share her concern. "Sarah, these are minor incidents. A couple of broken windows does not mean we are on the verge of race riots. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill." But Sarah's investigative instincts told her she was right. In her 20 years on the job, she had learned to sense when something was changing in the city. The atmosphere in Ridgeway was becoming increasingly tense, and sooner or later that tension was bound to find an outlet. It was a sunny October morning at the Pittsburgh Medical College. Falcon Collins was rushing to his surgery lab when he bumped into a girl carrying a stack of medical journals in the hallway. The papers scattered across the floor, and they both bent down at the same time to pick them up. "Sorry, I wasn't looking," Falcon said, picking up a cardiology journal. "It's okay," the girl smiled. "Isabella Ramirez, 3rd year. Falcon Collins, also 3rd year. It's strange we haven't met before." Isabella was the daughter of Carlos Ramirez, owner of the Mexican restaurant in Ridgeville. 21 years old, a brilliant student specializing in pediatrics. Her parents came to America before she was born and worked their whole lives to give their daughter an education. Over the next 2 weeks, Falcon and Isabella spent more and more time together. They studied anatomy in the library, ate lunch in the cafeteria, and discussed medical cases in practice. Falcon was impressed by her intelligence and compassion for patients. Isabella admired his determination to become an emergency room doctor. "Why emergency medicine?" she asked one day as they sat in the campus park. "There's no time for prejudice," Falcon replied. "When a person is dying, it doesn't matter where they come from or what language they speak. The only thing that matters is saving their life." Isabella smiled. It was this honesty that made her fall in love with him. Meanwhile, in Ridgeville, Ryan McCormick had secured a new contract to renovate the school gym. Work was scheduled to begin in a month, but he was already noticing changes in the student body at the city schools. Too many new faces, too many children with wrong last names. "Tommy, look at the student list," he said to Henderson, handing him a folder of documents. "When I went to this school, half of these names were unpronounceable." Tommy leafed through the list and nodded grimly. After losing his job at the factory, he was particularly sensitive to how the city was changing. His own children now attended classes where half of their classmates did not speak English at home. "What do you say we invite the guys to the next meeting with Carlos from the Mexican restaurant?" Ryan suggested. "Let him explain why he thinks he has the right to open his business in our city." "Good idea," Tommy agreed. "It's time to explain to them who's boss around here." At the police station, Detective Sarah Mitchell studied the new reports. 3 complaints had been filed in a week. A grocery store owned by a Puerto Rican family had its window covered in graffiti. A threatening note was found in the mailbox of a family from El Salvador, and the headlights of a car with out-of-state license plates were smashed. Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The pattern was too obvious to be a coincidence. Someone was deliberately intimidating immigrant families, making them feel unwelcome in the city. She tried to talk to the potential victims, but most refused to cooperate. Fear was stronger than the desire for justice. Families feared that official complaints would only make the situation worse. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I understand your concerns, but without your statement, I can't start an investigation," Sarah persuaded the grocery store owner. "Detective, I have 3 children," the woman replied. "If I complain, what will happen to my family? It's better to keep quiet and hope that everything will pass." Gregory Collins noticed changes in his son's behavior during their weekly phone call. Falcon sounded happier. There were new intonations in his voice, and he laughed more often when talking about college. "How are your studies going?" Gregory asked. "Great. By the way, I want to introduce you to a girl, Isabella. She's also studying medicine." Gregory felt a slight uneasiness, not because his son was dating someone. That was natural. Something in Falcon's tone suggested that the relationship was serious, and serious relationships made people vulnerable. "Okay," Gregory said. "Maybe you can invite her home for the weekend? I'll make dinner." "Really? That would be great." After the conversation, Gregory sat in silence for a long time. His operational experience had taught him to be cautious with attachments. In the world where he worked, loved ones often became a weak spot that enemies could exploit. But Falcon wasn't an operative. He had a right to a normal life, love, a family. On Friday, Falcon brought Isabella to Ridgeville. They stopped first at her father's restaurant so she could say hello to her parents. Carlos Ramirez greeted them warmly, but Gregory noticed a look of concern in his eyes. "How are things in town, Mr. Ramirez?" Gregory asked as Falcon and Isabella walked to the car. "Not very good," Carlos replied honestly. "For the last few months, someone has been trying to scare us. They broke a window and left notes. The police know about it, but they can't do anything." Gregory nodded, mentally noting the information. His professional instincts automatically began to analyze the situation. Who could be behind the threats? What was their ultimate goal? How serious was the danger? At dinner at the Collins house, Isabella made a good impression on Gregory. She was intelligent, educated, and had clear principles in life. She talked about her plans to become a pediatrician and help immigrant families who often couldn't afford quality medical care. "Many are afraid to go to the doctor," she explained. "The language barrier, financial problems, distrust of the system." "I want to change that." Falcon looked at her with admiration. Gregory could see that his son was truly in love. And that worried him, not because Isabella was unsuitable, quite the contrary, but love made people vulnerable. After dinner, while Isabella was helping clear the table, Gregory took his son aside. "She's a good girl," he said. "Yes, the best," Falcon replied. "Be careful. There are many people in the world who don't approve of different relationships." Falcon frowned. "Dad, We live in the 21st century. People have changed. Not all people, son. Not all. That same evening, after the young couple left to return to college, Gregory called an old acquaintance at the FBI. He inquired unofficially whether there were any active extremist groups in Ridgeville. The answer was not surprising. Several organizations were under surveillance, but had not yet taken any serious action. "Why are you interested, Greg?" asked his acquaintance. "I just want to know what's going on in my town." Meanwhile, Ryan McCormick was holding another White Wolves meeting. This time, more people had gathered, 12 in total. Rumors about the group were spreading among the town's discontented residents. "I saw an interesting couple today," said one of the new members. "A white guy with a Mexican girl. Young, students, I guess. They were walking down Main Street, holding hands like it was normal." Tommy Henderson perked up. "Where exactly did you see them?" "Near Ramirez's restaurant." The girl went in, and the guy waited outside. Ryan smiled slowly. "Interesting. Maybe we should get to know this guy better. Explain to him what traditions are accepted in our town." The group members nodded in agreement. Finally, there was a specific goal, an opportunity to show that the White Wolves didn't just talk, they took action. "Careful," Ryan warned. "Just observation for now. Find out who he is, where he lives, what he does. Then we'll decide what to do with him." Detective Sarah Mitchell was finishing her workday when she received a call from an informant at one of the city's bars. One of the patrons was talking about the problem of mixed couples and the need for educational work. "Did they name names?" Sarah asked. "No, but they mentioned students. A guy and a girl they saw downtown." Sarah wrote the information down in her notebook. The puzzle was starting to come together. Threats to immigrant families, talk of mixed couples, an organized group with radical views. Everything pointed to a serious problem developing in Ridgeway. She decided to talk to her superiors, but she knew that without concrete evidence, they wouldn't believe her. She needed facts, witnesses, evidence. So far, she only had suspicions and intuition. On Sunday, Falcon called his father and told him about his weekend. Isabella liked the town and wanted to come back. Maybe they could rent an apartment in Ridgeway after college and open a joint practice. Gregory listened to his son's plans with growing concern. Falcon talked about the future as if the world were a safe place where people judged each other only on their merits. Gregory's experience suggested otherwise. "Son, maybe you should wait before moving? Finish your studies first? Get some experience in the big city?" "Dad, I want to help people here, in my hometown." Isabella feels the same way. "We can change the lives of many families for the better." After the conversation, Gregory stood at the window for a long time, looking at the factory chimneys. His son was an idealist who believed in the goodness of people. It was wonderful and dangerous at the same time. Gregory knew that evil in the world was very real, and it didn't stand on ceremony with idealists. He decided to keep a closer eye on the situation in the city, to use his connections, observation skills, and experience in analyzing threats. If someone was planning to harm his son, he needed to know about it in advance. It was a cold November evening in Ridgeway. Falcon and Isabella were returning from the cinema, holding hands and discussing the film. They decided to stop at the Maple Leaf Cafe on Main Street for a coffee before Isabella went to her parents' house. The cafe was almost deserted, just an elderly couple by the window and 3 men at a table in the corner. Falcon didn't pay any attention to the latter, but Isabella felt their eyes on her. Tommy Henderson sat with his back to the entrance, but his companions looked at the young couple with poorly concealed hostility. "Can we sit by the window?" Isabella suggested quietly. "Sure." Falcon chose a table away from the trio in the corner. They ordered coffee and pie. Isabella was talking about her upcoming exams when one of the men got up and headed toward their table. It was Steve Morrison, a 35-year-old construction worker and a new member of the White Wolves. "Excuse me," he said, stopping next to their table. "You're not from around here, are you?" Falcon looked up. "I grew up here. Is there a problem? Is the girl yours?" Morrison nodded toward Isabella. "Is she local too?" "Look, we're just having coffee. Falcon felt the tension. Is there a problem? No problem, Morrison smiled unpleasantly. Just curious. Guys from here used to date girls from here. Times are changing, huh? Isabella squeezed Falcon's hand under the table. She understood where the conversation was going. Times really are changing, Falcon replied calmly. For the better. Morrison laughed and returned to his companions. A few minutes later, the trio left the cafe, but not before Tommy Henderson turned around and looked closely at Falcon, as if memorizing his face. Who was that? Isabella asked when they were gone. No idea. Probably just drunk idiots. But the next day, Falcon found a note under the windshield wiper of his car. Your girl isn't one of us. Find yourself a suitable one before it's too late. Falcon tore up the note without showing it to Isabella, but the uneasiness lingered in his soul. He called his father without mentioning the incident, just wanting to hear a familiar voice. How are you, son? Fine. Studying, working on my thesis. How are things at the factory? Gregory sensed something was wrong in Falcon's voice, but didn't press the issue. Everything's fine. You sound tired. Exams are coming up. Lots of studying. After the conversation, Gregory sat in thought for a long time. His fatherly instinct told him that his son was hiding something, but Falcon had always been independent and didn't like to share his problems. At the White Wolves' headquarters in the basement of Ryan McCormick's house, he studied the information his people had gathered. Falcon Collins, 22 years old, medical college student, son of Gregory Collins, head of security at the Allegheny Steel Plant. Clean record, no problems with the law. A guy from a decent family, said Tommy Henderson. His father has been working at the plant for 5 years, but his son has been corrupted by that Mexican woman. Ryan nodded. That's exactly why he's the perfect example. We'll show what happens to traitors to their race, even if they come from good families. What do you suggest? Asked Morrison. Psychological pressure for now. Notes, phone calls, surveillance. We'll give him a chance to come to his senses. If he doesn't get it, then we'll move on to more convincing arguments. At the police station, Detective Sarah Mitchell received another report. Someone had smashed the windows of the Gutierrez family's car. The words "Go home" were written in paint on the glass. This was the 7th such incident in a month. Sarah went to the scene and questioned the neighbors. No one had seen anything, as usual, but an elderly woman from the house across the street whispered to her, "Detective, I saw a white pickup truck driving slowly down the street twice before it happened. I didn't remember the license plate number, but the driver was young. Can you describe him? Just a regular guy, short haircut. I couldn't see anything else." Sarah wrote down the information. A white pickup truck, a young driver, too general a description for a city where half the men drove similar vehicles. But it was the first real lead. A week later, Falcon received a second note. This time, it was slipped under the door of his dorm room. Last warning, dump the Mexican girl or you'll regret it. Falcon couldn't ignore this one. He showed the note to Isabella, and she turned pale. Falcon, maybe we should be more careful. Only meet at college? No, he replied sharply. I won't let some cowards hiding behind anonymous notes dictate how I live my life. We haven't done anything wrong. I'm scared, Isabella admitted. Strange things are happening at my father's restaurant too. Threatening phone calls, someone is watching us. Falcon hugged her. Everything will be fine. They're just cowards who think they can intimidate us. But we won't give up. That same day, Gregory received an anonymous call on his work phone. Mr. Collins? Do you have a son named Falcon? Who is this? Gregory asked sharply. A family friend. Your son is dating the wrong girl. It could end badly for both of you. The line went dead. Gregory immediately called Falcon back. Son, I need to talk to you. Right now, Dad, I'm in class. After class, come home. That evening, a serious conversation took place at the Collins house. Gregory told him about the call and Falcon reluctantly showed him the notes. "Why didn't you tell me?" Gregory studied the notes with a professional eye. "I didn't want to bother you. I thought it would go away on its own." "Falcon, this is serious. These people know where you live, where you study. They know about Isabella. They're organized." "What are you suggesting? That I dump the girl I love because of some racists?" Gregory was silent for a long time. His experience in the CIA told him that threats of this kind rarely remain just threats. Sooner or later, words turn into action. "I want you to be careful. Don't walk alone in the dark. Avoid deserted places. And if anything happens, call me immediately." "Dad, you're exaggerating." "No, Falcon. You're underestimating. The world is not as safe as you think." After his son left, Gregory took out his cell phone and dialed the number of an old acquaintance from the FBI. "Mike, it's Greg Collins. I need a favor. Unofficially, I'm listening. There's a group in Ridgeway that's threatening my son. Can you check what's known about them? Give me a couple of days." The next day, Ryan McCormick called an emergency meeting of the White Wolves. Informants reported that Falcon had shown the notes to his father, who had started making phone calls. "The kid didn't get the hint," Ryan said. "What's more, he drew attention to our activities." That changes the situation. "What are we going to do?" Tommy Henderson asked. "We'll show him and all the other traitors to the race what happens to those who don't listen to warnings." Morrison nodded. "When?" "Soon. First, we need to choose a suitable place and time, so that the lesson will be remembered for a long time." On Friday evening, Falcon and Isabella went to the Red Stag Bar, one of the few places in Ridgevale where young people gathered. The bar was located on the outskirts of town, near the industrial area. It was usually noisy and fun, but that evening the atmosphere was tense. Tommy Henderson and Morrison sat at the bar, glancing from time to time at the table where Falcon and Isabella were sitting. The young people danced and laughed, unaware that they were being watched. "The perfect place," Henderson whispered to Morrison. "Few witnesses, poor lighting in the parking lot." Morrison nodded and sent a message to Ryan. "Today, Red Stag, come." At 10:30, Ryan McCormick parked his pickup truck in a dark alley behind the bar. 2 other members of the group arrived with him. The plan was simple: wait for the couple to come out, intercept them in the parking lot, and have a friendly chat. Nothing serious, just scare them properly. But plans have a way of changing. At 11 o'clock in the evening, Falcon and Isabella left the bar. They walked to Falcon's car, arm in arm, discussing their plans for the weekend. Isabella wanted to introduce him to her cousins, who were visiting. "Stop!" a familiar voice called out. Falcon turned and saw 4 men coming around the corner of the building. In the dim light of the street lamp, he recognized Morrison and Henderson. "We told you," Morrison said, slowly approaching. "This was your last warning." Isabella instinctively pressed herself against Falcon. He felt his heart pounding wildly in his chest. "What do you want?" "For you to understand a simple truth," Ryan McCormick stepped forward. "There are rules in our town, and those who break them get a lesson." "What rules? What are you talking about?" "Purity of race, kid. That whites should stay with whites, and Mexicans with their own kind." Isabella was trembling, but she found the strength to speak. "We are Americans, just like you. We have rights." "Shut up, bitch," Henderson growled. Falcon stepped forward. "Don't you dare talk to her like that." Morrison punched him in the stomach. Falcon doubled over in pain, but remained on his feet. "This is just the beginning," Ryan warned. "If you don't dump that Mexican girl, next time will be worse. Much worse." The 4 disappeared into the darkness as quickly as they had appeared. Falcon and Isabella were left alone in the deserted parking lot. It was a cold December Saturday in Ridgeway. Falcon woke up in the dorm with bruises on his ribs after the incident in the parking lot a week ago. Isabella insisted that they go to the police, but Falcon refused. "What are we going to tell them?" he argued. "That 4 men approached us, 1 punched me in the stomach, and then they left? That's not a crime. At most, it's hooliganism." Falcon, those were racially motivated threats. This is serious. It will be serious when we give up. I'm not going to hide from those cowards. But Isabella saw how Falcon had changed after that evening. He became nervous, constantly looking over his shoulder on the street, avoiding crowded places. The medical student, who had previously believed in the best qualities of people, was beginning to understand that the world could be cruel. At noon, Falcon received a message from his father. "Come home. We need to talk." Gregory met his son in his office at the factory. On the table was a folder with photographs and documents. "A friend of mine from the FBI sent me some information," Gregory said. "There's an organized group of white supremacists operating in Ridgeway. They call themselves the White Wolves. The leader is Ryan McCormick, the owner of a construction company." Falcon studied the photos. The faces of McCormick, Henderson, and Morrison stared back at him from the black and white surveillance shots. "These are the ones who attacked us," he said quietly. "I thought so." "Falcon, these people are dangerous. They have a plan, resources, connections. You need to be very careful. What do you suggest?" Gregory was silent for a long time, weighing his words. "Take a leave of absence from college. Go away for a couple of months. Let the situation calm down." "Run away?" Falcon shook his head. "No, Dad. If I run away now, they'll think they've won. And then they'll start threatening others." Gregory recognized his own stubbornness in his son. In his youth, he too had been unable to back down, even when his mind told him it was the only sensible thing to do. "Then promise me, no heroic deeds. If anything happens, call the police and me immediately." "I promise." But Falcon had already made up his mind. That evening, he wrote to Isabella. "Meet me at the Red Stag. I want to talk." Isabella arrived at the bar at 8 in the evening. Falcon was sitting at a table by the window, nervously fiddling with a napkin. The bar was half empty. A few regulars at the counter, a young couple in the corner, a group of workers celebrating the end of the work week. "What's wrong?" Isabella asked, sitting down opposite him. "I've been thinking a lot about us." "About what's going on?" Isabella's heart sank. "Do you want to break up?" "No," Falcon replied quickly. "On the contrary, I want us to get married." Isabella looked at him in shock. "What?" "Not now, of course, after graduation. But I want you to know that I won't let anyone destroy what we have. Those racists think they can intimidate us, but love is stronger than hate." Isabella reached across the table and took his hand. "Are you sure? After everything that's happened? That's exactly why I'm sure. I won't give up." At that moment, Tommy Henderson was sitting in his pickup truck in the bar parking lot, watching the windows. He saw Falcon and Isabella talking, holding hands. It was the perfect opportunity. Few witnesses, a dark parking lot, an isolated spot. Henderson dialed Ryan McCormick's number. "They're here, at the Red Stag. It's time." "How many people are in the bar?" "Not many. A couple in the corner, a couple of old guys at the bar. No one else." "Okay, I'll get the guys together. We'll be there in half an hour." At 9 o'clock in the evening, 4 men entered the bar. Ryan McCormick, Tommy Henderson, Steve Morrison, and a newcomer, Jake Wilson, a former factory worker who had recently joined the White Wolves. They took a table at the opposite end of the room from Falcon and Isabella. The bartender, Bob Martinez, an elderly man of Mexican descent, sensed the tension. He had been working at the Red Stag for 10 years and had learned to recognize trouble. The group at the far table ordered beer but hardly drank it, glancing at the young couple the whole time. By 9:30, the other patrons had left. Only Falcon, Isabella, and McCormick's 4 men remained in the bar. Bob Martinez nervously wiped glasses, sensing that something bad was about to happen. "Maybe we should go?" Isabella suggested quietly. Falcon nodded. They finished their coffee and headed for the exit. McCormick nodded to his men. The parking lot was dark. The only streetlight illuminated only part of the asphalt. Falcon and Isabella were walking to their car when they heard footsteps behind them. "Those two again," said McCormick's familiar voice. Falcon turned around. 4 men slowly approached, forming a semicircle. "We warned you," McCormick continued. "This is your last warning." "Leave us alone," Falcon said, pulling Isabella close to him. "No, buddy. The time for talking is over." Henderson took a metal pipe out of his pocket. Morrison and Wilson moved closer, trapping the young couple in a circle. "Run!" Falcon shouted to Isabella and lunged at Henderson. The pipe struck him on the shoulder. Falcon fell, but got up immediately. Isabella ran toward the bar, screaming for help. "Shut her up," McCormick ordered. Wilson caught up with Isabella at the bar door and grabbed her arm. She broke free and rushed inside. "Bob, call the police. They're killing Falcon." The bartender grabbed the phone, but Henderson was already in the bar. A blow from the pipe knocked Bob Martinez out. In the parking lot, Falcon fought back desperately, but he had no chance against 4 men. Blows rained down on him from all sides. Henderson's pipe broke his nose. Morrison's fist broke his ribs. "Enough!" McCormick shouted. "He's learned his lesson." But Henderson was furious. "That bastard has to pay for everything." The last blow with the metal pipe hit Falcon in the temple. He fell and did not get up again. Isabella screamed, sitting on the floor next to the unconscious bartender. Through the window, she could see 4 men leaning over Falcon's motionless body. "Damn it," McCormick cursed, feeling for a pulse. "Henderson, you idiot. You killed him." "I didn't mean to. He shouldn't have resisted." "We have to leave." "Now." The 4 quickly left the parking lot in 2 cars. Isabella ran to Falcon and fell to her knees beside him. Blood flowed from a wound on his head. His eyes were closed. "Falcon! Falcon, wake up!" She checked his pulse with trembling fingers. Nothing. She began indirect heart massage, artificial respiration, everything she had been taught in medical school. But it was too late. The police arrived 12 minutes later. Detective Sarah Mitchell arrived behind the patrol cars. She saw Isabella sobbing over the body of a young man, Bob Martinez, regaining consciousness with a broken head and blood on the asphalt. "What happened?" Sarah asked, crouching down next to Isabella. "They killed him," the girl sobbed. "Racists. They killed Falcon because he was dating me." Sarah surveyed the scene with a professional eye. Signs of a struggle, blood, witnesses in shock. It was what she feared. Racially motivated violence had escalated from threats to murder. "Did you see the attackers?" 4 men. White, middle-aged. 1 with a metal pipe. Sarah recorded the statement and called in the investigation team, but she knew that without specific names and evidence, it would be difficult to find the killers. At 1 o'clock in the morning, Gregory Collins was asleep at home when the phone rang. "Mr. Collins? This is Detective Mitchell from the Ridgeway Police Department. I need to talk to you. It's about your son Gregory was instantly awake." "What happened?" "Sir, I'm afraid I have some bad news. Your son Falcon died tonight. He was the victim of an assault." The world stopped. Gregory sat up in bed, feeling his hands tremble. "Where?" "In the parking lot of the Red Stag Bar." "Mr. Collins, I'm so sorry. Can you come in to identify him?" Gregory slowly put down the phone. 22 years ago, he had held his newborn son in his arms and promised to protect him. He had failed to keep that promise, but Gregory Collins had another skill. He knew how to find people who didn't want to be found, and he knew how to respond to violence with violence. Taking an old phone out of the safe, Gregory dialed a number. "This is Collins. I need the files on the Ridgeway group, all the information, addresses, connections, weak points, and I need weapons." In the morgue, Gregory stood next to his son's body. Falcon looked as if he were sleeping, except for the bandages on his head. 22 years of life, a medical education, plans for the future, all wiped out with one blow from a metal pipe. "Who did this?" Gregory asked Sarah Mitchell. "We're investigating." The witness says there were 4 men, but we haven't been able to identify them yet. Gregory nodded. He didn't tell the detective about the FBI files on the White Wolves. The official investigation would take its course, but Gregory had his own plan. The next day, Sarah Mitchell studied Isabella Ramirez's testimony. The girl was in shock, but tried to remember all the details. The descriptions of the attackers were general: middle-aged white men, one with a metal pipe, talking about racial purity. Miss Ramirez, can you remember anything else? Any distinguishing features, scars, tattoos? One of them was taller than the others, with a short haircut. He seemed to be the leader. The other one, with the pipe, was the angriest. Sarah wrote down every word. She knew this case would be difficult. A racially motivated murder would attract media attention, pressure from her superiors, and public outcry. But she had few leads. Bob Martinez also gave a statement, but he had lost consciousness after the first blow and remembered little. The surveillance cameras in the parking lot hadn't been working for 6 months. Meanwhile, Gregory met with his old CIA partner at a nameless motel outside of town. Mike Harrison brought what Gregory had asked for: files on every member of the White Wolves, their addresses, families, habits. Greg, I understand how you feel. But don't do anything rash. My son is dead, Mike. Killed by racists for dating a girl with the wrong skin color. What is there to think about? There is the law. There is justice. The law didn't protect Falcon. Justice won't bring him back. Mike sighed. What do you need? A gun, unregistered, and a car that can't be traced. Gregory, he's my son, Mike. I won't let this go. Unpunished. Mike took a Glock 19 pistol and car keys out of his bag. Be careful. And remember, we never met. On Sunday evening, Gregory sat in a rental car across from Ryan McCormick's house. He studied the schedule, habits, and routes of each member of the group. Professional skills that had been dormant for 5 years awakened with frightening ease. Sarah Mitchell worked late, studying all cases of racial violence in Ridgeway over the past year. The pattern was clear: an escalation from petty vandalism to threats, from threats to physical violence, from violence to murder. Someone was systematically escalating the situation. She realized that she was dealing not with isolated incidents, but with an organized campaign of terror. And Falcon Collins's murder was not the end, but the culmination of this campaign. Monday morning in Ridgeway began with news reports of the murder. Medical student dies in racially motivated attack. The headlines in the local newspapers stirred up the town. Gregory Collins read the articles over breakfast, which he couldn't swallow. Journalists called Falcon a promising young man, a victim of hatred, a symbol of modern intolerance. A symbol. His son had become a symbol. At the police station, Detective Sarah Mitchell was conducting the morning meeting of the investigation team. On the board were photos from the crime scene, a parking lot diagram, and witness statements. We have descriptions of the 4 attackers from Miss Ramirez, Sarah said. White men, aged between 25 and 40. One tall, clearly the leader of the group. Another with a metal pipe, the actual killer. The motive, racial hatred. Sergeant Williams raised his hand. Detective, how does this connect to the other incidents? This is an escalation. For months, someone has been systematically intimidating immigrant families. The murder of Falcon Collins is a logical continuation of that campaign. Sarah didn't mention her suspicions about the White Wolves. She didn't have any direct evidence linking McCormick's group to the murder yet. At the construction company, Ryan McCormick paced nervously around the office. He hadn't slept since Sunday, realizing the magnitude of what had happened. It was one thing to intimidate immigrants, but quite another to murder the son of an influential man in the city. Tommy Henderson sat opposite him, pale and trembling. I didn't want to kill him, he repeated for the 100th time. I just wanted to teach him a lesson. It's too late to think about that, McCormick replied sharply. The main thing now is to keep your mouth shut. No one saw anything, No one knows anything. What if they find us? They won't. They have no evidence. But McCormick was wrong. Gregory Collins was already on the hunt. Using his surveillance skills, Gregory spent 2 days studying the members of the White Wolves. He knew their addresses, their daily routines, their weaknesses. Steve Morrison lived alone in a trailer on the outskirts of town. Jake Wilson rented an apartment near the factory. Tommy Henderson had a house in a working-class neighborhood, a wife and 2 children. Ryan McCormick was the most difficult target. He had a large house in a prestigious neighborhood, a security alarm, and an irregular schedule. But Gregory had the time and patience of a professional. On Wednesday evening, he followed Morrison to Murphy's bar on the outskirts of town. The worker spent 3 hours there, drank more than he should have, and at 11 o'clock at night, walked home across a vacant lot. Gregory was waiting for him in the darkness between the dumpsters. "Steve Morrison?" The man turned around, trying to focus his drunken gaze. "Who's there?" "Father Falcon Collins." Morrison sobered up instantly. He tried to run, but Gregory was faster. A blow to the solar plexus, a grab for the throat, and Morrison fell to his knees. "Where are the others?" Gregory asked quietly. "I don't know anything." Gregory pulled out his gun. "My son is dead. I don't have time for games. Ryan McCormick organized everything. Henderson killed the guy. Where are they now?" "I don't know. I swear I don't know." Gregory studied Morrison's face in the dim light of the lantern. The fear in his eyes was genuine. "If you're lying, I'll be back." Morrison nodded, trembling all over. Gregory disappeared into the darkness as suddenly as he had appeared. The next day, Sarah Mitchell received an anonymous call. "Detective? About the murder of that student. Check out the White Wolves gang. Ryan McCormick, Tommy Henderson." "Who is this?" The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone. Someone was giving her a lead. But who and why? She requested the files on McCormick and Henderson. Ryan McCormick, 35 years old, owner of a construction company, no serious offenses. Tommy Henderson, 29 years old, construction worker, a couple of arrests for drunken brawls. Sarah decided to start surveillance. If these people were really connected to the murder, sooner or later they would make a mistake. Meanwhile, Gregory was watching the Henderson house. Tommy's wife worked at a grocery store and their children went to school. A typical working-class family. Gregory knew that Henderson was the perpetrator, not the organizer, but he was the one who killed Falcon. On Thursday evening, Henderson went to a bar. Gregory followed him, sat down at the next table, and listened to their conversation. Henderson drank whiskey and looked around nervously. A stranger approached him, a tall man in a leather jacket. "Tommy, how's it going?" "Jake, not good, really bad." "Because of Sunday?" "The police are asking questions. McCormick told me to keep quiet, but I'm scared." "Everything will be fine. No one saw us." Gregory remembered Jake Wilson's face, another member of the group. On Friday morning, Sarah Mitchell arrested Steve Morrison. He was found in a trailer in a state of alcohol poisoning, muttering something about father's revenge and the hunt. "Mr. Morrison, you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Falcon Collins." Morrison did not resist. In the police car, he kept repeating, "He'll find us all. My father will find us and kill us. Who are you talking about?" "Gregory Collins. He came to me. He said he would avenge his son." Sarah felt a chill. The victim's father was conducting his own investigation. This changed the situation dramatically. On Friday evening, Gregory watched the McCormick house from a rented car. At 8 o'clock, Ryan left the house, got into his pickup truck, and drove to meet Henderson at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Gregory followed them, keeping his distance. The warehouse was the perfect place for a final confrontation. Isolated, no witnesses, plenty of cover. He parked 100 yards from the building and walked toward the warehouse. Through a broken window, he could see McCormick and Henderson nervously discussing the situation. Morrison has been arrested, McCormick said. He'll tell the police everything. What are we going to do? We're leaving. Today. I have money and connections in other states. What about our families? They'll stay here for now. When things settle down, we'll bring them. Gregory entered the warehouse silently through a side door. Two men stood with their backs to him, illuminated by a dim light bulb. Ryan McCormick? Both turned around. McCormick instinctively reached for the knife hanging from his belt, but stopped when he saw the gun pointed at him. Gregory Collins, Falcon's father. Listen, Mr. Collins, McCormick began. No, you listen. Gregory stepped closer, keeping his gun raised. My son is dead, killed because he fell in love with a girl of the wrong color. Henderson was shaking, sweat running down his face. It was an accident. I didn't mean to. An accident? Gregory's voice was icy. You planned this for months. You threatened him, followed him, intimidated him, and then you killed him. We just wanted to teach him a lesson. McCormick tried to justify himself. Teach him a lesson? For what? For seeing more in people than the color of their skin? Gregory approached Henderson, the barrel of his gun almost touching his forehead. You killed my son. Please, I have children. I had a child too. At that moment, the police burst into the warehouse. Sarah Mitchell and a group of officers surrounded the three men. Mr. Collins, drop your weapon. Gregory slowly turned to the detective, keeping his gun raised. These men killed Falcon. I know. We're going to arrest them, but not like this. The law didn't protect my son. But the law will punish his killers. Drop your weapon, Mr. Collins. Gregory looked at Henderson, whose face was contorted with horror, then at McCormick, who was trying to maintain what remained of his dignity. Months of planning, killer skills, thirst for revenge, all collided with the voice of reason. Will they get what they deserve? He asked Sarah. They will, I promise. Gregory slowly lowered his gun. The officers immediately grabbed McCormick and Henderson and handcuffed them. Gregory Collins, you are under arrest for illegal possession of a weapon and making death threats, Sarah said as she approached him. Gregory nodded and held out his hands for the handcuffs. Detective, make sure they are punished for Falcon's death. I'll do my best. The White Wolves trial took place 4 months later. Ryan McCormick received 25 years for organizing a criminal group and second-degree murder. Tommy Henderson received life imprisonment for first-degree murder. Steve Morrison and Jake Wilson received 15 years each as accomplices. Gregory Collins received a 2-year suspended sentence for illegal possession of a firearm. The court took into account the circumstances of the case and the psychological state of the father who had lost his son. Isabella Ramirez graduated from medical school and moved to California. She was never able to return to Ridgeville after the tragedy. Sometimes she thought about Falcon, about their plans to open a joint practice, about the future that never was. Sarah Mitchell was promoted and headed the hate crimes unit. The Falcon Collins case was a turning point in her career, showing the importance of early intervention in situations of racial tension. Carlos Ramirez closed his restaurant and moved to California to live with his daughter. There is too much pain in this town, he told his neighbors before leaving. Gregory Collins returned to work at the factory, but he was no longer the same person. His colleagues noticed how much older he looked and how rarely he smiled. In the evenings, he sat at home alone, looking at photos of Falcon, his school years, graduation, his first day at medical college. Revenge did not bring his son back. Justice did not heal the wound. But Falcon's killers were punished, and that was all that mattered. On the anniversary of Falcon's death, Gregory went to the cemetery. Simple words were engraved on the black granite. Falcon Collins, loving son, future doctor, 2002 to 2024. Flowers lay next to the grave, not only from Gregory, but also from Falcon's classmates, from families he had helped during his medical internship, from people who remembered the young man who dreamed of saving lives. They paid, son, Gregory said quietly. All 4 of them paid. The wind rustled the leaves on the trees in the cemetery. Life went on in the city, but for Gregory Collins, time had stopped on that December night when the phone rang and changed everything forever. Some wounds never heal. Some losses are impossible to survive. But sometimes justice prevails, even if the price is too high. In the police files, the Falcon Collins case was closed as solved. In the memories of those who knew him, the young man remained a symbol of hope, destroyed by hatred. In his father's heart, he forever remained the son he failed to protect.